All right, welcome to the next module. In this module, you are going to learn how to start building a sense of negative impact with your customers. You're going to learn to explore the impact, the consequences, and the negative ramifications of the business problem alongside quantifying the pain in a way that helps you justify the purchase, in a way that helps you build a very powerful business case. Now, these next two pieces of this methodology are where raw emotion live. Okay, this is where you start to tap in to powerful drivers that get people to act. Now, the good news is we've already started to tap into that by peeling back the onion, as you will see, right? Peeling back the onion is actually one form of building negative impact. But as you explore negative impact with your buyer, they are going to start to feel heightened emotions. And then in the next module, when we flip over to the future state, I'm going to teach you how the feeling of value is heightened the most when people experience a contrast, okay? A contrast between a painful present state and a very compelling future state. And so when you combine these two modules of exploring negative impact and measuring the cost and all of that, and then flipping over to building a compelling future vision, you can build very, very powerful motivations in people that are in service of getting a mutual win-win deal done together. So let's start by talking about the what. What exactly is negative impact? In fact, see if you can answer this one, right? Write your answer down to this question, and then let's compare notes. So if you want to remain active and learning with me and building your skills, go ahead and do that now. Maybe pause the recording for 30 or 60 seconds or so and write down your answer. Okay, so my answer to this question is negative impact is the consequences, the effects, and the costs of your buyer's business problem. Okay, it's your business problem and how it is creating ripple effects throughout the rest of the business, or if you sell to a nonprofit or government, creating ripple effects in a negative way throughout the rest of their organization. And the point is, when you bring these consequences, these effects, these costs, these negative impacts, when you bring them to the surface with your buyer and you talk about them and explore them in a non-manipulative way, which I'm going to teach you how to do that, they increase urgency and the perceived magnitude of the problem. Okay, this is how you ratchet up the problem up the priorities list, and you create a stronger bias for action and bias for buying sooner than if you didn't. So the good news is this is not a completely new concept. Okay, you've already been starting to touch on learning what it means to build negative impact. Okay, so this story, what you're looking at here, this is the third time we've returned to this story in this course. And this was actually an example of building negative impact through peeling back the onion, right? Once the senior executive, the SVP of sales, took over the conversation and she started answering, our discovery questions and peeling back the onion, she was answering in terms of negative impact, right? There were cash flow issues. They weren't going to be able to have a runway past a couple years. And as a result, they might have seen a highly dilutive down round when it comes to raising funding. Okay, so we're going to explore different ways to build negative impact than just peeling back the onion, because there are more ways, but you've already been exposed to what building negative impact starts to look like. Okay, so one of the things I want to make a point of, and why this is so effective, is negative impact. In other words, the consequences, the effects, the negative ramifications of business problems, those are the language of senior buyers. Okay, they're thinking in terms of second order effects. They're not always thinking of negative ones. Sometimes they're thinking of positive ones, like what would happen if we tapped into a new market or something like that. But they do not stay at the surface. They dig into their business. And so once you start bringing consequences, effects, and negative ramifications to the surface, you start speaking the language of senior buyers and senior executives. So let's transition to another question here, and then we'll start getting into the how. Why is building negative impact so valuable and so important? What do you think? Okay, write down your answer, think about this, engage with me here. Maybe pause the recording if you need to. Why is building negative impact valuable? Okay, well, the first thing, and I'm going to teach you 5 benefits of it in just a second, but the first one is it taps into this psychological force called loss aversion. Okay, loss aversion is a term coined by a guy named Daniel Kahneman, who wrote a number of books and won a Nobel Prize in the field of behavioral economics. Okay, and what loss aversion means is that people are more or less twice as likely to spend money to avoid loss than they are to gain something. Another way to say this, in a more accurate way that Daniel Kahneman talks about it, is the pain from losing something is twice as intense as the pleasure from gaining the equivalent thing. In other words, if you lose $100, it's twice as painful, or the emotion is twice as intense as the pleasure you gain from making $100. Losing something is twice as painful as gaining something, even if they're the equivalent things. Okay, this is one of the ways humans are wired. Okay, so here's an example, and this actually comes from Daniel Kahneman. This is written about in his book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And in the book, he talks about what they call the $50 experiment, or the $50 experiment. And in this experiment, they had 2 groups of people. They had round 1 and round 2. And in round 1, they had, I think it was like 6 or 7 people. Each participant in the first group was given $50. Now, in this first round, the participants had 2 choices. They had to make one of 2 of these choices. They could either keep 30 of the $50, they totally get to keep it. And notice the italics on the word keep. We're going to come back to that. They can keep 30 of the $50 guaranteed, or they can gamble all 50 of the dollars with a 50-50 shot of getting to keep all 50 or lose all 50. So which one do you choose? Do you get to keep 30 of the 50 guaranteed, or do you want to go all or nothing? Which one do you choose? Now, the result is those in that round, only 43% of them took the gamble option. Only 43% of them took the risky option, the second option there. Most of the people chose to keep the 30 of the $50. Now let's go over to round 2. Okay, so this one was similar group of people, same number of people, similar demographics. Each participant, again, was given $50, same as last. But here's where things started to change. In the second round, participants had 2 choices. They could lose 20 of the $50, or they could gamble with a 50-50 shot of keeping all 50 or losing all 50. Okay, now the result in this case, and I want to see if you caught the, kind of strange thing about this. Look really close. If you have to rewind 60 seconds to see round 1, I want you to catch what was kind of odd about this. The result in this one is now, instead of, I think it was 43% chose the gamble option, now 63% chose the gamble option. More than half of people chose the gamble option in this one, and a less than half chose it in round 1. Now here's the catch, okay? These were the same things. These were mathematically the same bet. In both scenarios, you had an option to keep $30 of the 50, or you can gamble all or nothing. The only thing that was different was the language. The first one said you can keep 30 of the 50. The second one said you can lose 20 of the 50. That's the only difference between these. But they framed one to be positive, which was the first one. They framed the second one to be, you're going to lose something. It was negative. It was tapping into loss aversion. So what was the difference? The negative versus positive framing. That was the only difference. If you don't find that fascinating, you might just not be a brain science nerd by me or like me. But the point is, we can use this in our sales cycle in a way that's non-manipulative, in a way that's in service to our customers, because it helps bring the negative ramifications to the surface. So with that frame, there are 5 sales benefits of building negative impact, and then we'll start to get into the tips, the techniques, and the methodology of building it. Okay, so the first one here is it builds more urgency, right? When you build negative impact, what comes with that is a greater bias for action from your customers. Okay, they're more likely to buy and buy faster. Second, if you're selling bigger deals, it increases your likelihood of having a bigger deal. Okay, with greater negative impact comes larger willingness to pay. Okay, and they might expand to different parts of their business with whatever solution you sell. Third, we kind of already talked about this. You are more likely to gain access to power when you've explored negative impact, because like I said, negative ramifications are the language of executives. And when you're building the perception of a larger problem by exploring negative impacts, you're more likely to get on a senior executive's radar. You're more likely to align with a priority that a senior buyer, senior executive, C-level executive, whoever you want to get access to, you're more likely to get on their radar. Fourth, and this is a huge one, especially at the time of this recording, you are more likely to justify the cost, right? As you explore negative impact, a lot of those negative ramifications and consequences have financial value, and it's going to help you build a sturdy business case that justifies the spend. And the last thing, and arguably the most important, at least when it comes to your mindset as a sales professional, is this doesn't just serve you. Okay, it does serve you, right? You build urgency, you get access to power, you get all those great things, but arguably your customer benefits from this exercise of exploring negative impact together more than you, okay? Because it helps them appreciate the full magnitude of the problem. It helps them crystallize the problem. It helps them make prioritization decisions in a way that they weren't considering before. And so just remember that, right? This is not just your benefit, okay? This is to your customer's benefit, and you should act like it. A lot of salespeople I've noticed, especially if they phrase their negative impact questions in a cheesy way, they get kind of squeamish about exploring negative impact because they think their buyer is going to see them as doing something self-serving. And there's a way to phrase things in a way that's not self-serving. And if you do it that way, you're not just serving yourself, you're serving your buyers as well. Okay, so now that we understand what negative impact is and what the value is of doing it, now let's get into the how. I'll see you in the next video lesson.